From In the Beginning to the Musical Apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What. I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Greetings, BSW heathens. The t-shirt giveaway is still ongoing. We are just 13 patrons away from reaching the goal. Thank you to all of those that already support the show, like Nico, Brian, Jim, Jimmy, Melissa, David, Sean, John, and Randy. Once the show reaches 25 patrons, I will pick a patron at random and send them a Bible Says What t-shirt. Simply go to patreon.com/bswthepodcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you a chance to win prizes, gain early access to each episode, listen to unaired conversations, and unlock the patron feed. That being said, in Mark 16:15, Jesus says, "Go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation." But would it not be completely useless preaching to those Yahweh has already hardened and selected for his purposes? What was the point in Moses asking Pharaoh to let his people go hold a festival in the desert if Yahweh was behind the scenes manipulating the situation, bending free will in order to fit his agenda, his perfect plans? Romans 9:18 and Exodus chapters 9 through 11. According to the Bible, it is also futile to preach to the Jewish people. Jesus says in John 8:44 that the Jews are the very spawn of Satan. The Christian demigod in sandals is judging an entire group of people based on their lack of belief in him. Even after Jesus displayed his magical abilities, the Jewish people still refused to believe his magic was real, John 12:37. But these people were given a disadvantage by Yahweh. He has blinded their eyes and deadened their hearts, so they can neither see with their eyes nor understand with their hearts. John 12:40. The Christian demigod admits in 2 Thessalonians 2:11 that he personally has sent the Jewish people a powerful delusion so that they will believe a lie. Believing in this lie comes with a particular eternal punishment, something Yahweh was very well aware of when he sent down his powerful delusions. At one time, these were his favorite people. What happened? Why does Yahweh want them to suffer? His reason for blinding, deadening, deceiving, and condemning these people was because their ancestors had the audacity to worship more than one deity. The jealous Christian deity decided to serve up some justice by forcing a lie upon his favorite people and then sentencing them to everlasting torment for believing it. This is all part of his perfect plan. This is the fate he has chosen for his chosen people. Why would anyone want to worship such a monster? Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
Couldn't
didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is pastor, missionary, and blogger Bruce Taylor. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Michael. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long you been a pastor?
Oh, wow. Well, I compared to some, I guess I was a little bit of a late starter. I started pastoring in just before 2000. I was ordained in January 2000. And so, I was 30, just about 30, 29 years old. But yeah, so I had been to Bible school years earlier, but then got married and started having kids and a family and just working, and the Lord brought it about around for me to begin pastoring then, and church couldn't pay me, so I kept working and doing all that, and it just kept leading to different things and churches, and big churches and small churches, 4 different provinces in Canada, and then now internationally over to Ireland.
Well, so where are you at now? You're in Canada or are you in Ireland?
Well, we're currently on a personal leave in Canada
Gotcha.
because my mother-in-law's health is quite poor, so we're back for a short visit.
Sorry
So
about
that, yeah, you caught me in Pacific time zone.
Well, good. I'm glad I caught you. I'm glad you're here, man. So you said that the Lord brought things around for you, opportunities. You believe these opportunities, such as Ireland and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I mean every step of the way, even mistakes that I made, you see in the journey where you do things and it just, from your perspective, it doesn't work out. And yet the Lord takes that and turns it for something good. We call it, like, we had this one experience where I call it our Jonah moment. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Jonah, but
Yeah.
Jonah, that Old Testament prophet, the Lord wanted him to go to Nineveh,
Mm-hmm.
and Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. He didn't want anything to do with Nineveh. He didn't like them. He hated them. And so anyways, he goes the other way and tries to do his own thing. And, of course, the story, short version, he gets thrown overboard the ship and gets swallowed by a giant fish and spit out on the shore over by Nineveh 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to Nineveh. So for us, we traveled from British Columbia. I was serving in British Columbia, and we had a guy asking us if we were going to Fort McMurray, Alberta, which is northern Alberta oil town that I grew up in, and stuff. We spent a number of years there, and we had always said we were never going back. And so I had a guy suggesting that we go back up there because people were going up there for work. Oil was booming at the time, back in the early 2000s, but he this friend of mine, he's like, yeah, but they're going up there selling drugs and stuff. We go up there and give people some hope. We go up there and offer counseling and pray for people and stuff. And I was like, well, if you want to go, I know people I connect you, but I'm never going back. And so instead we headed to Ontario. So we had like 4,500 kilometers, 3,000 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And over 6 months, fell flat on our faces. Just nothing worked. Nothing. And so then we put everything in storage and drove back across the country, and I was looking for any work. Didn't matter. And I kept getting job offers for Fort McMurray. I'd get an interview in Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, and companies would be saying, oh, that's great, but we need you in Fort McMurray, not here. And I'd say no. And then finally, with the family, we needed to do something. And my wife said, whatever job offers you get, or you take something. And I had 3 job offers the next day, and they were all in Fort McMurray. We moved back up to Fort McMurray and then proceeded to spend over 10 years there. But I only worked out in the oil for not even a full 2 years, just about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the church we were going to at the time just said, listen, would you consider getting back into ministry and work in the church? And so my guy is out of sight because by that time I was the regional manager for that company. So I had guys in different places working. They couldn't believe I would leave. I said, you've got it made. You have contract meetings with oil company vice presidents, and you buy donuts and coffee and visit sites and drive around in your company truck and go for big conventions. And so I said to one of them, I said, you love golf? He said, yeah. I said, what if you could give up 40% of your pay, all the perks and benefits, but you could go play golf every day and help other people learn how to play golf? Would you do it? He says, oh, in a heartbeat. Well, it's kind of like that.
Interesting.
I want to go and help people know God and live for Him, and just do that every day. So that was sort of a bit of the twists and turns of my journey, and I mean, they're not very interesting, most of them, but they did lead us to where we are today.
Gotcha. So regardless, there was you were being led here, and you were going to end up in that one spot regardless. Kind of like Jonah ended up in his destination eventually in the end, but you didn't have a big fish.
Yeah, no, unless you want to call Ontario a big fish.
It did kind of swallow you up, I guess, huh? That's funny. That's fun. So do you think that Jonah's story is actual story? Or do you think that Jonah spent 3 days inside of a whale or large fish or whatever it was?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do, and part of the reason for that is like we see it in the Old Testament. Some people wrestle with whether it's allegory, but the thing is, if you treat it that way, you've got to figure out where you're going to divide that, because Nineveh is a real city.
Yeah.
These are real people.
Hmm.
Jonah was a prophet mentioned in other areas in the Bible, so we have no other reason to believe that he was a real person. And so, it would really be the question of whether people believe you can get swallowed by a fish. But I think if you look at things like the whale shark and the size of it, or if it was a whale, there's lots of big enough whales for that.
Right, but it's the surviving part that would be the issue. You got stomach acids and whatnot. There's a lot of things that'll kill you on the way down. So
yeah, but I remember one guy talking about it, and he said, like, especially if we're talking about some of these whales, right? Whales, these big whales that eat plankton and stuff like that, they don't have stomach acids that are meant to digest you. Well, not that they couldn't eventually do it, but it wouldn't be a quick process.
What about oxygen? I mean, I'm not real great on biology here, but is there oxygen inside the stomach?
Yeah. So again, is an interesting thing. The one guy said that because of the method of breathing into the inner cavity of the whale, that he felt it was feasible. But,
I mean, we've all seen Pinocchio. Geppetto, survived inside of there for a while. That's not really how it looks inside of a whale, though.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think the thing that we have to be reminded of is, if it's something that we can scientifically replicate, then that's nice. I mean, I love science, right? I love all that sort of stuff. If we can replicate it, hey, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But there are going to be things that happen that don't make sense to us and we can't replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this not just because of stories like Jonah. We know this because we see it every day in our own time. Every day we have new discoveries. Every day we have new things that we go, whoa, we didn't think it worked that way. And I think that's the beauty of God's creation and the beauty of the gift we have of science, that we get to try and discover all sorts of great things about it, and yet we have so much more to learn. And so I tend to be one that I try not to write off the miraculous because we don't understand it. Rather, I like to accept it by faith and then say, I'm looking forward to growing in my understanding of it.
So, a couple things there. First thing, because you can't separate I'm just going to call it fantasy, the fiction from the fantasy, such as the miraculous deeds, the whale, the guy living inside the whale, stuff like that, flood waters destroying everybody. So because you can't do that, you just accept it anyways. You don't question that part. You just take it as fact with your faith. Well, fact and faith are kind of two different things.
Well, no, I view my faith as highly based on fact. So the way I pursue this is, and I think, like, I appreciate the way Lee Strobel explains it. He says that, especially as somebody who's a Christ follower, and I like to use that wording probably a little more these days than Christian, because I think Christian gets wrapped up in all sorts of things that really aren't me. But as somebody who's a Christ follower, I want to search for the truth, and I want to search for the fact, and I want to let the chips fall where they may. And as I continue to do that, I continue to see things that point me to God. And so I don't run from them. I just think there's sometimes things that are confusing to us when we see them, and we don't understand how they make sense. But as we've learned throughout history, no different than when, people, really thought the earth was flat, or
Well, we go with the Mormons.
things
Do you
like
think that the Native Americans are the Israelites?
Exactly. You have all these kinds of things that happen.
Why don't you believe that one, though?
Well, because I don't, as I look at it, it's not based in any fact.
Neither is being swallowed alive by a whale.
Well, except we have got numerous documents that point towards enough different things in that one book that would cause us to say, well, so if you're going to disbelieve that part of it, where do you draw your lines? And so, but it's the kind of thing where I think the important part of that writing is actually what it points to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing about as people digest the Bible, whether it's things like Jonah or the building of the temple or the formation of Israel, I mean, there's all sorts of things. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that these things all are purposeful in pointing to something that's greater. And the purpose of the entire Old Testament is actually to take us to Jesus. And all of these things that happen beforehand, in one way, shape, or form, I mean, some of them there's historical information or things like that, but all of the big pieces, they are directing and pointing towards what Jesus brings to everything. And then Jesus himself gives the purpose of Jonah. So there's a few purposes. One is it's about discrimination, right? Jonah was discriminating against the people of Nineveh, and God didn't want him to.
Interesting.
Right? So there's things you have to learn from that. But then Jesus says that you'll receive the sign of Jonah, which is the same as he spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish.
Mm-hmm.
The Son of Man will 3 days. 3
So
nights
Jonah was discriminating against the people of Nineveh because Yahweh wanted him to go there and save them, but Jonah said, no, I don't want to, right?
Right, because he hated them. They were evil.
Let's look in the New Testament. We both agree that Jesus says to preach the gospel to everybody, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Are there some people he doesn't want you to preach to, or that there's no point to preach to?
No, I don't believe that.
In John 12:40, it states that Yahweh has blinded the eyes and hearts of the Jewish people on purpose, so that they won't believe. So what's the point in Jesus telling everybody to talk to everybody, but God's already made up his mind about the Jewish people, so much, in fact, that he's going to change their hearts. He's going to deceive them.
So one of the things that, again, there's things in the Bible that we have to remember there's a lot of things that are descriptive, that are descriptions of what is going on, what has happened, what's going to happen, what we should do. Okay, there's descriptive things. But then there's prescriptive things, which are things that say, you need to go and do this or do that. This is how you respond. This is how you treat people. And so some of these things, they are describing some of what Jesus is fulfilling. So here, Jesus is not teaching that we should not share the love of God with people or proclaim the gospel or any of those things. That's not what he's saying. He is saying that there's a reason why the majority of Israel would not listen to him.
Because he made them.
And it is part of the fulfillment of God's judgment against them for not listening to God throughout the vast majority of their history.
So because the Old Testament, because those people, their ancestors did something bad, so now the new people will be blinded and their hearts will be changed. I wanted to touch real...
12, it says in verse 38, so that the word spoken by the prophet Isaiah may be fulfilled. Okay?
Yeah.
So then when you get down to 40, this is part of him talking about this being fulfilled in what he's doing. So it's not.
It doesn't make it a good thing, though. I mean, honestly, it really doesn't make it any better if you add the fulfilled part to it.
Let me, I guess, put it to you a different way.
Mm-hmm.
If you had people coming onto your property and defacing it and wrecking it,
mm-hmm.
and hurting your family and continuing to threaten to do so, and really just being enemies of you,
I would leave.
well, or would you expect that there would be some form of justice against them?
I don't expect justice, honestly. I know we live in a cruel, unfair world, and yeah, I don't expect ultimate justice. So I would move. That's what I would do in that situation. I'd find myself someplace else to go. This is an emergency. I'm being attacked. My things are being attacked. It's time to relocate.
Well, you have to remember Israel. See, people who again, they misunderstand. They think that these things happen to Israel because God is mistreating Israel. No, Israel is merely a snapshot of humanity. So we have to remember that all of humanity has been enemies of God. When we decide to go our own way and we know are better than what God does, we are setting ourselves up as enemies of God. And God warned way back all through the Old Testament, all the way back into Genesis, that if that was going to be the case, that we would come under his judgment. And so people get all in a knot about that. They tend to cry out, this isn't fair, it's not right, it doesn't sound caring or loving. But now look at it a little differently. The God of the universe says everybody's under judgment because we have declared that we know better than him.
That doesn't really make us an enemy, though. If my kid tells me he knows something more than me or he's better than me, even if I know he's wrong, that doesn't make him my enemy.
Well, that's true, except you're equating God's creation to your kid.
Well, that's what I have. That's what I have around me to equate things to. You know, that's
what I'm saying is this isn't that close a relationship. Instead, here's what happens. All of humanity is sitting here as enemies of God. And God, being the creator of all, has the right to have justice over them. However, instead of just enacting, God himself, in Jesus the Son, actually comes to the earth to make a way of hope and forgiveness and love and freedom from that judgment.
Okay, so I'm going to go here.
And one of the biggest,
again, I'm going to go with kids because that's, you know, we're Yahweh's kids, right? I mean, you agree with that?
Well, I believe some people are his kids.
We're his creation. We're his children. He creates. It says it's in the Bible that we're his children. We're the children of God, right?
That's a loose taking of things, and okay. I get what you're saying.
Right. I mean, let's go with my child that thinks he knows better than me. Even if my child leaves and curses my name, he can still come back. I don't care. It's fine. You know what? You had a moment. We're past it. Let's get over it. What Yahweh does is he creates another kid. This kid he's going to kill just so he's able to forgive his other kids. I mean, if you created everything and you're a superior being and everything, I still don't see the good in that situation. I don't see the love in that situation.
You have to remember that's not it though. Jesus came willingly.
So would this other kid. It doesn't make it right.
And Jesus came the father didn't kill him. The other kids did.
Yeah, the father sent him to be killed. This was his doing, right?
But everybody's responsible for their actions, man.
So is Yahweh. Why is Yahweh not responsible for his actions?
Well, there's a difference between those of us who do things that are sinful, right? God did not cause the death of Christ.
Hebrews 9:22, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Who made that rule?
That's very true, and all of that. What I'm saying is, Jesus willingly went. Okay, but it was the hard-hearted sinfulness of humanity. It was the evil that wanted him dead, right? And so the thing is that God takes, it's much like the story of Joseph.
So evil.
God,
Okay, go ahead.
what evil people do, and then he takes it and redeems it for good. And that's how the picture of Joseph and his brother selling him into slavery and all that is actually a picture of what Jesus will later do. In that people who are evil do things out of evil, yet God can take it and use it for good.
Why do you believe?
Well, part of me, it's because I think I can do nothing else.
Explain
As
that.
I've come to understand more about who God is, I can do nothing else. But that's partly based on my continued study and learning and growing and trying to figure things out because I haven't arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of that is, I think, especially as I've gotten older, a deepening faith, relying on God in those areas that I don't understand.
So you're admitting there are things you don't understand about Christianity and the Bible or Yahweh, or all of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Everything.
Gotcha. And that's where you just implant faith automatically, and then it's cool with you.
Well, it doesn't keep me from trying to learn more. But I think it's at the point where you are finding yourself at a crossroads or a place where you're not sure you can learn more on that particular thing at that moment. For me, that's where faith takes over.
So you believe the cross is loving regardless of Yahweh needing blood for forgiveness. So you think it's a good thing regardless.
I do.
I use this. Okay, go ahead.
Here's why it's so loving. It's so loving because he no longer requires your blood or my blood.
Okay, so let's go back to that part where he required our blood. That's not loving either.
Well, no, but that's the beauty of God. God is fully just, but he's also fully loving. He's always balanced, and that's why he did what he did.
Okay, fully
His
just.
justice needed to be answered. So guess what? He answered it for us. God, fully just and fully loving.
Is it fully just to require bloodshed for forgiveness?
I think God is fully just in that requirement. Yep.
Is it okay for anybody else to do that? Would it be fully just for anybody else to require bloodshed for forgiveness?
I think that from my perspective as a Christ follower, we should not be requiring that. We shouldn't be requiring any harshness towards others.
I agree. We shouldn't be requiring any harshness towards others, and we shouldn't be requiring. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm a big proponent, actually, of forgive others whether they've even asked for it.
Wow. Yahweh's not that way, but you are. That's very interesting.
I'm only that way because of him.
Well, I'm not. I'm that way, but not because of him.
So the reason I'm that way is because I came to understand that in order for me to be fully forgiven, and not just forgiven of all of my sins, but in 2 Corinthians 5:21, it talks about Jesus and the Father making Jesus, who knew no sin, to be made sin for us, that we might be the righteousness of God in him. And it means what we call the great exchange, that something happened on the cross. Jesus actually, my sin became his, and he paid the price for it. But he didn't just set me to zero. I actually received his righteousness, so that when the Father looks at me, he sees the righteousness of Jesus, not me. And then the other thing it does is this is why I use the term a little differently. It makes me now a son in the family of God and a joint heir with Jesus. And so now I am a co-heir with Christ in the kingdom. To me, these are amazing and wonderful things. This is blessing beyond measure. This is something I can't fathom my humanity. And then it drives me to say, wow, if God can do that for me, can I not be full of grace and love and care for others? Can I not be quick to forgive and quick to help and be somebody that gives in ways that others might say, man, that's kind of stupid. Why'd you give so much? But because I've been...
Oh, cut out there.
Yeah, so just because I've been given so much, and so I see all of what God has done for me as just an amazing blessing.
Quick to forgive.
Right.
You're quick to forgive. I'm quick to forgive. Yahweh's not quick to forgive. You find being quick to forgive a good thing. But this perfect being is not. He requires bloodshed.
No, he's quick to forgive.
After you
because
kill something.
The bloodshed he paid. It's done.
Right, again, so something has to die in order for him to be quick to forgive. Nothing has to die in order for me to be quick to forgive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the problem with that is whether you and I forgive somebody makes zero concern of their eternity. Our forgiveness is merely a relational factor. Right? It is not judicial in nature. Right. And so if there is a legal requirement by the government for certain things to happen, and somebody else wronged you in that, you might forgive them. That doesn't mean the government will.
Mm-hmm.
And so
But they didn't wrong the government, did they? Did they wrong the
the
government or me? Who actually needs the forgiving?
Well, the point is, if they've wronged you,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So let me give you an example that might make sense. You have an accountant. He's filing taxes for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cool.
And he rips you off and totally misses the taxes.
Jerk, he's fired.
You're on the hook, but guess what? The government still goes after him, even if you forgive him, because the government will also go after such accounts. Okay. So what I'm saying is, it's not a question of whether or not we need to forgive properly and appropriately, which we find actually in the life of Jesus, because even on the cross, Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing.
So if the government, if I didn't love the government, would you be okay with them punishing me for not loving them? Or agreeing with them?
Well, here would be my take on anything to do with the government. I expect the government to do messed up stuff. So I don't expect righteous acts from a government.
Well, we can't use that then.
That's just my take on things. I expect we're in a broken world.
Besides Yahweh, is there any kind of
right?
Is there any kind of authority that you would accept besides Yahweh?
No, I accept all sorts of human authority. I just see it as broken and messed up.
My point is,
I'm okay with that.
My point is, if there was a law that said if I don't love the government, that they can punish me for, let's just say, a week, would that be just?
I would say that there is a factor of justice in that from the perspective of those in authority made such a decision. So I say from I guess, a technical perspective, that is probably just. From a spiritual, religious type perspective, from my relationship with God perspective, I would see it as not just. But at the same time, I'm the kind of guy that goes, well, what does it require to love the government? Like, what do I need to do? Is it just that I don't hate them? Is it just that I don't try and rebel against them? What does it really mean?
Just deep down in your heart. It's a feeling, because Yahweh can know my thoughts. And what I'm getting at is Yahweh knows my thoughts, my heart. He knows what would change my mind. So at this point, if I die as an enemy of Yahweh because I don't believe or I don't love him, that's justified to you if he punishes me for that. That's what I'm getting at here.
Well, so here's I guess the other way. If the government said everybody owes $1 trillion in back tax, But if you fill out this form, we're gonna say what you owe. You aren't gonna owe anything.
Yeah, I see where you're getting at. But this is a sin that Adam and Eve, this is generational. This is like if my great-grandfather didn't do his taxes or something, I'd have to pay his taxes. Is that, wait, do we have to do that? I don't know.
No, but
that might actually be the way it is. I don't know.
Because the way sin works is it's actually more in line, not with the question of the action, but the infection.
The what?
The infection.
The infection?
So we usually think of sin as the action. Okay, so so-and-so went and murdered somebody.
Are they not actions? Yeah, that's an action.
Right? Right, action. But the bigger question for sin isn't the action. It's the infection. It is an underlying human reality we are faced with from the infection of sin, which causes us to have a precondition.
So I'm born. It's the born sinful part. So that's the inheriting it. That's what I'm trying to say. Is if my grandparents committed a crime, I don't inherit the crime.
We inherit the condition, and because of the condition, we commit our own crimes. I mean, it's as easy as saying, like, have you? And Jesus boils it down to two things, right? He says all the laws based on do you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and do you love your neighbors. Right?
No, well, so, I would disagree with Jesus there, but go ahead.
Well, but if we look at those two things, all we have to say is, well, have you always loved God ever since the day you were born? So, no, of course not.
Well, actually,
have you always loved everybody else and treated them properly? Ever? Like you've never been mean to anybody. You never yelled at them in anger. You never gossiped about them.
Okay. None of those things are deserving of eternal hellfire, though. That's not a disease that deserves such punishment.
It is indicative of the sin condition. That's why it happens. The point of sin is we look at sin and we rate it in grades. We say, well, yeah, but I only told a little lie. That guy over there killed somebody. Or I just, gossiped a little bit about something else. But that person stole somebody. And we rate how bad sin is. But see, the foundation of sin isn't actually the action. Is the fact that we in our hearts decide we know better than God and that we are our own God.
Can you describe sin? Is it a tangible thing? Because Yahweh uses blood to get rid of it, to wash it out. So I see it as like if you're doing your laundry and there's this grass stain, you use some shout and you get it out. So is that how Yahweh does it? He uses that as a chemical reaction to get rid of it?
No.
Or is it more like blood magic?
The reason why the blood was required.
How does it work, though?
Well, the reason why is because your life is required for your sin.
Well, that's a rule Yahweh made up. I understand that. That's great. But how does it work? Like, I understand blood magic. You need blood, and then you can do things. You turn that blood into that thing, or I don't know. Blood magic. And I can't figure out how sin works. I can't see sin. I can't taste it. I can't smell it. It's just a thing that Yahweh doesn't like. It's a crime against Yahweh, right?
I see sin every day. I
like a physical being? Yeah. Not the actions of sin,
no,
but sin itself, like a physical being, because Yahweh has to get rid of it, right? He has to wash it away in order for you to be in heaven. What is it? Like, the blood does something. It has to do something. It has to go somewhere physically or spiritually. I mean, what is it? It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. So, I guess let's maybe look at something that might make more sense first. Okay. Do your thoughts exist?
Inside my head, yes, my thoughts exist. They're not a tangible thing, though. I can't erase them with blood. Mm-hmm.
Well, no, but you can't see them. You can't show them to me unless you communicate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know sin exists by what we see displayed about it, not because you can see it as a hard object.
It has to be some kind of object, though, for it to be gone.
It's a heart object. Okay? So now let's go back to your thought. Have you ever had a certain thought that only maybe days, weeks, months, years later, you have a totally different thought? same thing.
Change my
In
mind?
other words,
Or is that what you mean?
change of mind. So, like, for instance, there's somebody in my life that at one point I thought they were the best. And then a few years later, I couldn't stand being around.
Okay. So
Right.
were you given evidence on the contrary of this
Hey.
person being the best?
Okay, so that's part of it.
Okay.
But my point is that the unseen, and we see the result of the unseen. So you see the result of the sin condition in the activity, the attitude, the words, the life of humanity.
No.
But then you see a totally transformed life
No.
when you are a Christ follower.
Oh, man, I've seen lots of Christians do horrible things.
One of the reasons I tend to not use that word very often.
Religious people, Christ followers.
Yeah,
I went to a church that
I-
didn't believe in, religion either. They were just Jesus followers, and I saw some pretty terrible things.
And this is the beauty of my faith, though. The trademark of being a Christ follower isn't that my life is perfect. It's that I should be somebody who seeks to be humble and repentant, transparent about who I am. The
So what
worst thing that ever happened in the last generation or two, especially, but over longer, but certainly the last couple of generations in what I've seen in North American Christianity, is the idea that people try and fill a mold and look a certain righteous piety, and all of the realities of their life are hidden away. It actually grows a worse sin condition.
Okay, so you just try and better yourself every day. You try and be a better you, and you use Jesus to do this. Am I correct?
It's actually me recognizing I don't have a better.
That's terrible. Of course you do. You can better
Right.
yourself all the time.
My only hope for anything ever being better is more of Jesus in me. That's why, like, when the Bible talks in Galatians about the fruit of the Spirit, and we see love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, gentleness, self-control. And these are attributes all of us should have in our lives, right? That's what we want. But the Bible teaches that's actually what grows out of you because of the Spirit of God.
So you think
So
God holds those
if I try and
attributes?
force that, if I try and force that, then it becomes something based out of me. But if I surrender my life daily to the Lord and to His Spirit working in me, those things begin to emerge naturally out of me because of Him.
You're cutting out a lot
Therefore,
there,
my
buddy. Sorry.
change is less of me, more of Him. Because when Bruce shows up, it's never good.
Well, I can better myself every morning. I try to do 1% better than I did yesterday. Give a little more effort here, do a little more, learn something over here. I strive to do that. I can do that without Jesus. I don't need Jesus. And I feel you could do the same thing since I'm capable of doing it.
So in doing that, do you feel you grow in righteousness?
Describe righteous. What is righteous?
One who is without sin.
See, according to who? I can just not love God, and that's a sin right there. I can tell you that he's a documented child killer, and I'm not going to worship him.
Just to help me then, why don't you define for me what your standard of righteousness for your life should be then?
I don't have a standard to go off of. Honestly, it's just do better. Treat everybody with kindness and respect. If you don't want that happen to you, maybe we shouldn't do it to them. Empathy. I rule my life by empathy.
Okay. So kindness, respect, empathy, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
That's another
Treat
good
others
one.
the way you want to be treated. So that sort of stuff.
Correct, yeah.
So, okay, so I like that. That sounds pretty good, right? So then my question is, have you ever failed at that?
Of course, I'm a human being. I fail all the time.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the thing, though, right?
Right, because that failure to God is a sin.
You can set your own standard of righteousness, But the sin condition you have is the same as all of humanity.
See, that's just made up again,
And
though.
it causes you not even to be able to measure up to your standard of faith.
You know how terrible that sounds? That my failures are a sin to God? It makes
They're a
him
sin
mad.
to
It makes me
yourself.
an enemy. My failures make him an enemy.
No. You're the one that just told me the standard you're setting for yourself. Therefore, when you don't measure it up, you're sinning against yourself.
No, I don't need the word sin. I'm just failing. See, you're replacing the word failed with sin, and sin doesn't even need to be in there. Like, I did not do what I was supposed to get done today. You know what? I failed at it. But to Yahweh, you didn't do what you were supposed to get done. It's a sin. Or
See, that's because the word failure we feel better about it, because typically
I don't actually
meant
sometimes.
to be used.
I failed at
It's
that.
meant to
Man,
be
that
used
makes
with,
me pretty sad. But it's actually a good thing to fail, because then I can move on. I can learn from that situation. It's amazing how it works. I can do better next time.
The thing about it is the way the word is meant to be used. Okay, I was trying to build the sandcastle, kept falling down. I failed at it.
It's
Or
okay.
I took a course and my marks weren't that good. I failed at it. Okay, I mistreated somebody and was harsh with them when I shouldn't have been. That's not a failure. That's me. Acting.
Absolutely. I failed to be kind. I failed to stop and listen. I failed to hold back my tongue, instead of just irrationally, lashing out or something. But that's not a sin again. Again, that's you have to.
How do you make that? How do you deal with that?
Like I said, I learned from situations when I failed, when I said something I shouldn't have, when I didn't do what I should have probably done in that situation. I can learn from that. I learn from my mistakes. I'm not going to beat myself up over it or think, crap, now Yahweh thinks I'm an enemy. Now Yahweh hates me, eternal death, eternal damnation, eternal fire. Now it's coming. Oh my goodness, no, because I failed. No, dude, you failed. Dust yourself off, get up, and fix it. No magic, no invisible guy, no nothing, man. None of that. I don't need any of that.
So your failures don't make God mad at you, by the way.
Well, if I don't do what he wants me to. If I lash out irrationally at somebody, that's a sin, is it not?
All of humanity is under that sin condition.
Right, I've already
you can strive to live as kindly as you can. But all of your kindness doesn't change the underlying condition. The underlying condition brings judgment. And so that's why the beauty of Christ is there, in that you don't need to go to church. You don't need to sign on to a particular group. You do not need to, become a Baptist or an Anglican or a Catholic or any of that stuff. But you can trust him, and he wipes away any requirement of the justice of God on you, regardless of how many times you fail. And so
see, you're adding that, though. You're giving me this sin. You're adding this to my life that I don't need.
No,
because where does this original sin come from? Where does this disease come from originally?
Look, Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. So because these two people screwed up, now everybody in forever is punished for it.
Well, God's righteousness would have been to eliminate Adam and Eve right then on the spot, in which case none of us would exist.
Done. Then we wouldn't have to serve him and worship him and bow down to him and ask for his forgiveness and kill things, and he wouldn't have to drown the planet.
Like our lives, our existence, your family, my family, all of our friends are here because of God's mercy.
No. So
God's justice is for us to get what we deserve. We don't want that.
What was the purpose of the flood?
Says he's not going to give us what we deserve right now. And God's grace, which we find in Jesus, is actually giving us something we don't deserve.
But what was the purpose of the flood?
Well, God was executing judgment, right? But in the middle
Noah's
of it,
sinful. Noah's a man. He's born sinful. Why did he not execute judgment on everybody? Noah's son committed a sin right after they got out. He looked at his dad naked. His whole tribe and forever people were slaves because he saw his dad naked. So, what was the purpose of the flood if sin and bad things, and according to Yahweh, were still there. What was the point?
Okay, so all of these different things actually point towards something greater. So we find out in the New Testament that the flood is actually a picture of how God provides a way
Come on.
for you to avoid his judgment.
He didn't provide a way for all the infants, puppies, and kittens. No, those he just drowned those. He didn't provide them a way. He provided Noah and his family a way. Other sinful people.
So you don't think there was dogs and cats on the ark or something? I'm not sure what you're saying.
You've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. What about the rest of them? You've also got a few people. What about the rest of them? He didn't save one toddler. Do you think a toddler deserves to be drowned because its parents are doing something wrong?
Now, if you read that, if you read about this, one of the things you'll find is that people had no belief in what was coming.
Send a prophet. He did that before.
Yeah. How long did it take Noah to build the ark?
Hundreds of years. Why didn't he send a prophet?
Right. Noah was a prophet.
No, he was an ark builder to a small group of people. This is the entire planet.
Noah was a prophet. And keep in mind that the planet was a way different place then.
Right, it wasn't right. He still didn't talk to everybody on the planet, though. He's too busy building an ark. He's got this giant boat to build, all these animals to collect. I don't think he's got time to go out and prophesy all around the world.
Well, so if you're building an ark this size, and let's just even say, it was happening over 100 years. We'll just throw a number out there.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to say, what are you doing? Well, I got to build this ark. Why? Because God's going to flood the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the sort of thing that went on. And you know what? Nobody. Listen.
How many people did he actually talk to? That's what I'm saying. Like, this guy's too busy building an ark. Let's say, 300 people. 300 people out of the entire planet saw Noah building this ark and asked him questions. What about the rest of them? How are they still guilty and justified of their wrathful rainwater drowning?
Well, and again, we struggle with all of this.
Yeah.
Because part of our
empathy
challenge is we've got a modern, westernized.
No, dude, I have empathy for these toddlers. I have empathy for these animals that drown during this irrational lashing out.
Okay.
You know
what? I have empathy for them too.
Good. And that's a good start.
Part of the reason I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a picture of what is coming. It is a picture of God's judgment coming. And I need to try and help people understand they do not have to undergo that judgment.
No, I don't think they do either.
Because I care about them. I have empathy for them. Right? I want them to have hope. That's why one of the things that drove us to come into Ireland is Romans 15, where in verse 13 it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope." And one of the things we've learned is more and more when you look around the world, and you don't see it as clearly in the United States and in Canada, at least in the West. You see it more in places like Quebec, in a lot of Europe, like in Ireland, but in other places where historically you had this huge Roman Catholic stronghold, and it really kept out any other form of faith for a long time, and actually held a stronghold on the people. So as that has deteriorated because people have seen the corruption, they've seen all the abuses and all of these sorts of things that went on,
you have just in a generation, a drop from 85+% attendance at Roman Catholic churches in Ireland, less than double digits. You see this happen, but the thing is, here's what happens hand in hand with it. When people have nothing they have hope in, the suicide rate here in Ireland went up dramatically in the last 20 years. Now there's a variety of things.
I don't know if I would correlate the two on that one. That's
There is a relationship, is what I'm telling you, because if life is bad, if they feel there's no way out, and they have no hope.
Well, I'm sure it has a piece of it. I'm sure some people it might hold partly true. But I to say that that's the main reason, to say that that's for most of them or anything like that is just I wouldn't agree with that. But we're almost out of.
I'm telling you see it in all of these places. You do your own research at some point.
Well, of course, yeah.
Countries that were predominantly Roman Catholic that now have embraced a more humanistic view.
Yeah, but there's so many factors to it, man. I mean, you're leaving out so many things: economy, weather.
Some of those factors were present before the change, and the suicide rate was a lot lower.
I'll look into it.
Well, one of the reasons was people operate with fear. So in Ireland, they were continually afraid because if you committed suicide, the Catholic Church says you're going to hell. And did that. Didn't matter how Catholic you were. We spend a lot of time with people who've lost adult children to suicide and things like that, helping them understand that it is not something that God rejects people for. Right? That there's factors going on inside of somebody, and it's not what dictates whether or not God is going to love you. And so I think there's elements of hope in all of this that are part of why I do what I do, because I don't want to see people under God's judgment. I want them to understand that in Christ, even if you make a total mess of your life, you're not going to be under God's judgment.
That's kind of where I want to go at the end here. I just want one last thing to go over is hell. The idea of hell. Do you believe in an eternal place?
Yeah.
Okay. And their fire, lake of fire, you believe all that, just like Revelation 20:15 says, and Revelation 20. Okay. And people who don't believe, I could be a really great person, but I wouldn't believe or. Sorry, there was a knock on my door there. Lost my train of thought. Dang it. Oh, eternal punishment. This eternal punishment, is this for someone who doesn't really do a whole lot of bad things, or, doesn't kill anybody, doesn't really steal, doesn't, you know what I mean? Somebody who just barely tells little white lies here, or gets upset when their sports team doesn't win, or doesn't love Yahweh, or thinks he's a murdering monster, and then dies. And he deserves eternal hellfire for those things. Do you think that's just and fair? Is the eternal punishment of it all?
Well, I think there's a couple of things I believe in that. And one is that when it comes down to it, I believe that I cannot decide whether somebody is going to be in hell. Only God can decide.
Sorry, you cut out there. You can't decide what?
I can't decide if someone is going to be in heaven or hell.
Right. No,
only God can decide that.
I understand that.
My first premise. But my second thing is, and I think it's a good question, is we have to discern some things like, do we think it would be okay for the likes of Stalin or Hitler or Jeffrey Dahmer or some of these other people that are known for great atrocities in heaven? And most people very quickly, you could name child molesters and murderers and war crimes.
Right.
And a lot of people quickly say, well, no, I wouldn't want them in heaven. It wouldn't make sense.
But do you believe they can be?
Well, so this is the question, though. So if they're not going to be in heaven, where are they going to be?
Well, they could be in heaven. If Hitler in the bunker before he got bombed accepted Jesus in his heart, Hitler's in heaven, man.
So, okay. Now that's a fair and appropriate answer as far as the way theory goes, right? And so I get that. But on a practical level, if we don't like the idea of hell, then what do we do with the person who's not repentant, not grabbing hold of Jesus, recognizing they've done horrible things?
I got an answer for that.
Should they be next to you in some eternity where they're just going to keep doing horrible atrocities?
I have an answer for that. It's called the eternal couch. This thing sits up in space somewhere. You can decorate it however you want, plaid or awful floral designs, whatever you want. But you put people on this eternal couch and they're stuck there for a certain amount of time, depending on how bad the things you were doing. So if I, let's say, lied, then I'd be up there for 2 weeks or something like that. There's a time limit for each thing that you do wrong. But for Yahweh, it doesn't matter what it is. I could steal a Snickers bar and I could not believe in him. I could call him a child-killing monster and I deserve eternal punishment. Not a specific amount of time on a timeout or eternal couch. Or no, he wants me to actually suffer. He actually wants me to burn and suffer. And it actually says in Matthew 10:28 that Yahweh is in hell destroying bodies and souls. So he's either in two places or he's there doing it himself. Either way, it's still him. But
Matthew 10:28?
Matthew 10:28.
No, Matthew 10:28 says, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell." Doesn't say that Yahweh is down there.
Is the him capitalized?
It's talking about him sending them there.
No,
right?
He says he's in hell destroying bodies, and it's what. I guess interpretation there.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
I could pull it up in Greek if you want, but
so we're supposed to fear the devil? Is that what that says? Is that what you're taking it as?
What I'm saying is the question of eternal punishment is there, and there are those that like the comfort of a purgatory idea, like you talked about. My thing I stress to people is, you do not have to roll the dice and wait and hope you get an eternal couch. You don't have to roll the dice and hope that, hey, maybe you did enough good things and God's going to be kind of okay with that. Maybe, the nice things you did outweigh the horrible thing you did to somebody. Hey, you could roll the dice with that. Or you could trust with assurance what Jesus has done right now, which would then mean you will have no fear headed for eternity. And that's, to me, that is the biggest importance about hell. Like, we get wound up on, well, is it fair for that person or this person, that situation in hell?
Right. Well, as you should, right?
If that, so
the particulars, the details.
I'll put it this way: if you have the information to avoid hell right now, then and you are declining it, then that's the bed you make yourself.
Yeah. Well, the opposite isn't. To me, honestly, isn't 100% any better. I'm going to be sitting there worshiping Yahweh for eternity with his name on my forehead. No nighttime. It's always daytime.
There'll be a new heaven and a new earth.
Gold everywhere.
There's going to be a great big banquet and a feast.
Yeah. No pork, though. You can't have pork or shrimp in that feast.
There's this I would have a different take on it myself.
But Yahweh doesn't like pork or shrimp.
Well, until he opens it up to Peter and sends the sheet down and says, "Take, kill, and eat. Don't call what I have made clean unclean."
He did, though. I didn't. Peter didn't.
Right.
Yahweh did. Yahweh's the one that said. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But I'll let you have the last word
you
here.
You won't have to support an Old Testament dietary law, so you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
But but the thing is that Jesus himself, I'll just say this one last thing for you, okay? That Jesus actually says in John chapter 3, whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light, because their works are evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, doesn't come to the light, lest his works will be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out to God. And in 17, just before this, it says, God didn't send his Son to condemn the world, right? But in order that the world might be saved through him. So this is the biggest important thing about people wrestling with the question of hell should actually be found in the idea that we need to help people understand that they can come to know Jesus and not worry about hell.
But you see, that's the problem, is I'm just not going to forget about it. I'm not going to forget about Yahweh's punishment. I'm going to address it. I'm going to judge him by the things he does, by the things he says, by the things he wants done. And that's...
So your infant child, maybe toddler, we'll go toddler. Your toddler child, have you ever noticed that there are times that the toddler child looks at the parents and believes we're incredibly unjust? And yet they really just don't understand.
That's a good way to put it.
Boys, when they were toddlers, I mean, I have grandchildren now, but when my boys were toddlers, I still remember them being fiercely upset with me. And yet I'm looking at it going, yeah, but if I let you run out into the street, you're going to die.
Yeah, it's a good way to explain it. I understand. It just doesn't really, the punishment and the bloodshed, it doesn't really correlate. It's a nice way to try it, but I just gonna have to not agree with you there. And we're out of time here. I got kids waiting myself. Got to sacrifice some pizza rolls for them, you know.
Hey, I appreciate you letting me on the show.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate your time, all your answers, and coming on, of course. I really do. Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Michael.
Talk to you. And that's all the podcast there is for you today. Thanks for listening. In case you missed the announcement at the start of the show, the t-shirt giveaway is still ongoing. Once the show reaches 25 patrons, I will pick a patron at random and send them a Bible Says What t-shirt. Simply go to patreon.com/bswthepodcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you a chance to win prizes, gain early access to each episode, listen to unaired conversations, unlock the patron feed, and much more. Thanks to the cosmic powers of the internet, it is now possible to buy me a beer or coffee online. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/bswthepodcast and click the appropriate buttons. A quick shout out to James for the beers. Thanks, man. If you can't support the show monetarily, please like, share, or leave a review. As always, you can find me at the Bible Says What Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram pages. You can also reach me at bswthepodcast@gmail.com. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly pick up your Bibles and read them? Congratulations, you found the Easter egg. Today I will be reading an email, errors and all, from a repeat guest that decided he did not want to continue the conversation. John. Why he calls me John, I don't know. John, you were even more belligerent and unwilling to listen that last time. You didn't respond to my arguments, you just interrupted me and denied what I said. You used sledgehammer rhetoric, give 10 things you object to, and say my views are stupid. Just for the record, never once did I call this man, or his views, stupid. Not sure why he put that in there either. Well, I don't play that game. So there is no purpose in continuing with the combative and unhealthy interview. If you want to be challenging to bring out truth and have a good discussion, fine. But what you did today is not profitable and is disrespectful. Please do not air the 10 to 15 minutes of wasted time we spent. Sincerely, repeat guest I shall not name. However, this conversation and other unaired gems can be found only at patreon.com/BSW the podcast.